who you're living around, the community and environment that you're surrounded by, your socioeconomic status, the resources that you have or don't have, they all play an impact. I mean, I remember this as early as, I would say, probably elementary school, like just being insecure in a lot of ways about, my hairy arms because boys would make fun of them in my gym class. And so then I would be wearing long sleeve shirts, or I didn't like that my sweat was showing. So I would only wear dark colored clothing. And then that progressed, that was grade school. And then I got, a little bit older. And then it was about wanting to look like these girls on social media and feeling, the need to compare myself and be like them. And it's, I think, just really hard to be a woman in society today with all of the expectations there are to look a certain way, act a certain way. And it did. I mean, it impacted my self-esteem, my confidence, the way that I looked at my body. I mean, there were definite struggles that I had. I remember there were days where I would just, look at myself in the mirror and be like, my stomach is not flat enough, which is ridiculous. Because it should be about being healthy. You know what I mean? It's making sure that you're giving yourself the nutrients that you need and, that you're staying active to be healthy. But it's easy to get really caught up in this culture of comparison. And that's something that unfortunately I went through, and I didn't want other girls to have to deal with that in the same way that I did.
When I think of my own career and I think of, the struggles that I had early on, it's hard for me to try to put myself now back in those shoes, and thinking of like something like, if you could talk to yourself 10 years ago, how would you convince yourself back then to know what you know now, and to not, to empower yourself back then? It's really tricky because I think confidence builds over time.
It needs to be looking at, say, for example, what your values are, what your strengths are, and then honing in on those things. So, if young John, I mean, now that I know you now, you're great with, editing and video and audio and all of these things. And if that was what you were interested at a young age, what I would say is focus on those things and helping John to, really build those skills and to lift him up in that area, right? So finding what is specific to that person and what their passions are, and not imposing your desire for what John's future is going to be onto him. And then the other thing too is, I think that you want to also focus on the stuff that's inside of an individual rather than just their outward appearance. And I think, it's totally okay to say that somebody is beautiful or gorgeous or wow, your hair is so nice, but also lift young women up by saying how smart they are, how creative they are, how unique they are, so finding those internal qualities from a young age and lifting those up, I think, is extremely important as well.
Absolutely. And you hit on a thing I want to dive a little deeper on, and that's parenting. What is your take on how parenting should be for empowering instead of imposing your own values? How do you nurture and grow children to be empowered on their own strengths?
Well, I think not being afraid to let your children fail is one of the big ones. And I think that's really hard. I can openly say I'm not a parent, but I have some young people in my life that I'm very, very close with. And nobody wants to see the young people in their life fail. However, that helps to build resilience. And another thing would be, and this was actually Dr. Ellen Rome, who is the head of the adolescent medicine for the Cleveland Clinic. One of the things that she said is it's really important not to be, that snowplow parent where you're trying to do everything for the child. And equally so, I think you still have to be supportive. So finding that balance between not being a snowplow parent or a hover parent and not being absent. And to me, I've found with all of the families that I've worked with, that typically works best, when you can kind of find a happy medium to be there for the child, but not impose.
What will the world look like to you and the next generation of women, maybe 10, 20 years from now?
That's a tough one. Well, I think I would say this. From the things that I have seen, I am very hopeful. I'm very hopeful for the next generation of young women. As we see more women of color stepping into leadership positions, as we see communities coming together. Like the other day, I was able to go to a few different networking events in the Cleveland area. And I am always just so floored by the openness and the willingness of women to support one another and each other's businesses and really uplift one another. The amount of Facebook groups that are out there to support one another now. I think there is a lot of good going on in the world. But I think I would be remiss to say that there aren't some things that I'm still worried about. I think that the mental health of young women is still, drastically declining with things like social media. And, obviously we're in a world right now, on the news, we've seen that there's a lot of people who are really divided. And I think that it needs to be people like us that step up and help to bridge these divides and to realize that we do need to come together in order to make this world a better place for young women to live, because the world is a little scary right now. And I think it's totally normal for people to feel hurt and upset and angry by the things that are going on. But I will say I am hopeful. And I think when it comes to, women, I think that women are stepping up and becoming more empowered. And for that, I'm very excited.